As technological advances have paved the way for drones to be used on U.S. soil, there are growing concerns over what the technology means for our privacy and civil liberties. Joining me to discuss this issue is ACLU attorney Catherine Crump. Catherine, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I just want to jump off by talking about the fact that there's already tons of cameras in society, right? Urban areas are full of cameras. What's the big deal about a drone with a camera on it?
There's a big difference between a camera that looks at a fixed point and a drone that can potentially fly around following someone wherever they go. In addition, drones can potentially look at huge urban areas and follow individuals for long periods of time. And so we think the differences are substantial and that drones are much more privacy invasive.
The Fourth Amendment protects us against unreasonable search and seizure. Does the Fourth Amendment protect us against a drone peering into our apartment or doing thermal imaging from above our building?
That's an open question. No court has yet addressed what the Fourth Amendment limits are on drone surveillance. I think there are good reasons to believe that drones can't be used to peer into people's houses or to take thermal imaging of those houses unless law enforcement gets a warrant based on probable cause, because people have a reasonable expectation of privacy against those forms of surveillance.
So what would you like to see both at a federal and a state level from a legal perspective?
We would like both states around the country and the federal government to find that law enforcement cannot use a drone to engage in surveillance unless they have a reasonable belief that engaging in that surveillance will lead to evidence of a crime. We don't object to the use of drones in general. There are lots of good uses for them, but they also pose privacy risks, and it's important to make sure that they're used in appropriate circumstances and don't become tools of generalized surveillance.
What about the individual? I mean, we've talked about law enforcement using drones, but what if I want to buy a drone? I mean, you're the ACLU, you believe in individual rights. Why shouldn't I have the right to fly a drone around with a camera on it and do whatever I want?
There is a difference between law enforcement use of drones and individual use of drones, and that difference is the First Amendment. People have the right to take photographs in public. But that doesn't mean that drones aren't going to pose some tricky privacy issues, even when they're used by individuals. I don't think many of us would want our neighbors to fly drones over our backyards while we're sunbathing there, and I think we're going to have all sorts of legal conundrums that we're going to need to work out as this technology becomes integrated into the U.S. skies.
There's been some talk by law enforcement of arming drones, of maybe putting a taser on a drone or tear gas canisters on a drone. Now this, I want to stress, is something that is not happening yet, but there has been some speculation that, hey, maybe law enforcement would want to be able to break up a demonstration by flying over with a drone and dropping tear gas into the middle of the demonstration. What are your concerns there? And do you think that the police with a drone would be more likely to take, more extreme actions than they would if they were actually there?
I don't think any serious people are proposing that law enforcement should be able to use flying robots in the sky to tase people or throw beanbags at them. I think that just poses such an obviously hazardous situation that it's not something that should even be on the table. And that the real concern is that drones are going to be used for surveillance, and we need limits put in place there.
So let me give you a situation. There's a drug dealer, alleged drug dealer. The police think he's up to no good. They don't necessarily have time to go get a warrant because they've just heard about something that they think is going to go down. They know that they can fly a little drone that looks like a hummingbird, follow him around to wherever this is going to go down, get something on camera. Should they be able to do that? I mean, I think a lot of people would say, look, what's the harm in allowing the police to use a drone? It's a valuable tool to be able to do this sort of surveillance.
I think we need to distinguish between two situations. In some cases, there's going to be a genuine emergency. And there's always been exceptions to the warrant requirement where there really isn't time to get a warrant. Then there's an exception. You can go ahead and engage in that surveillance. But what we don't want is law enforcement using drones to follow people around based on faulty evidence that those people are engaged in wrongdoing. Too many innocent people will be harmed. And so I think you can accommodate law enforcement needs to not get a warrant in extreme situations while requiring a warrant in more typical situations.
Catherine Crump of the ACLU, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.